To Phyllis Bennis, a fellow of the Institute for Policy Studies. She joins us from Washington, D.C. Many thanks for joining us on the programme. The United Nations Security Council has seen a consistent 14-1 split on Israel's actions in Gaza, with the US standing alone in refusing to condemn them, particularly when it comes to humanitarian concerns. Do you anticipate any shift at all in Washington's position during today's session?
I don't anticipate a shift, but I think what's important to recognize is something that the ambassador of Algeria said, that impunity breeds war. It's the United States government that provides the impunity that enables the continuing Israeli genocide. We should keep in mind that while this strike in Doha yesterday represents a serious escalation, the biggest impact is still being felt in Gaza as the genocide continues. And what's crucial is the United States, whatever it says, even if it said some different words this time, it is still continuing to send the weapons that make the genocide possible, in violation of existing rulings by the International Court of Justice and a crucial resolution passed a year ago by the UN General Assembly under the Uniting for Peace precedent. And in that context, it called for an arms embargo, a whole host of sanctions already. Now, that's not technically enforceable by the United Nations, but what could be very significant if the US would allow it, which I think is not going to happen, but what could happen would be the Security Council deciding to endorse the sanctions that have already been called for by the General Assembly in an overwhelmingly majority vote of the vast majority of countries and peoples of the world. In that resolution that calls for an arms embargo, for ending the transit of weapons, ending the transportation of weapons, ending airspace access. These are things that both individual countries can do. They could deny access. All of the Arab countries, for example, could deny access to Israeli planes that include Israeli officials that are complicit in this genocide or that contain weapons or military officials that are carrying out the genocide.
So Phyllis,
this could be done within the existing resolutions.
Apologies for interrupting. If they can do this, why haven't they done it yet?
Well, I think it speaks to the position of Arab states in terms of their eagerness to normalize relations with Israel and, crucially, to gain the advantages that that normalization brings them from the United States, both in terms of trade, in terms of financial arrangements, and in the case of Saudi Arabia and others, the promise of new access to weapons. Saudi Arabia was promised that if it normalized relations with Israel, the U.S. would allow a civilian nuclear program, which it has never been willing to acknowledge before. So those things have been more important than the concerns about Palestinian lives. But this is also true. It's not only the Arab states that are involved. There are countries around the world who allow, whose planes are being used to ship, planes and boats are being used to ship coal and other fuel to Israel, that are trading with Israel, that are buying Israeli military equipment, particularly military surveillance equipment, is very popular around the world for governments that want to use it for their own, against their own population. So in that context, there's a menu of options on that existing resolution that include an arms embargo, but include many other kinds of sanctions as well. And when we look at this question of impunity that the ambassador of Algeria spoke of so passionately, we have to look at who makes that impunity possible. That's the United States government. So things that can be done by individual countries and groups of countries becomes much more important when the United States continues to send 70% of the arms that Israel is using. Last year, the United States paid 40% of Israel's entire military budget. So the United States government is complicit in this genocide. So these actions that other countries can take can bring that to a halt and give Palestinians in Gaza a chance for life.
Under international law, no UN member state is permitted to use force against the sovereignty of another. To what extent is Israel relying on that unwavering US support especially from figures like Donald Trump, as a shield against any potential consequences?
It is completely relying on that. I think if there were any concern that Israel had about a wavering U.S. government, for example, they probably would not have carried out this attack against the negotiators in Qatar, one of the U.S. close allies in the region, where the U.S. base, the military base there, is the largest military base in the entire region, U.S. base located in Qatar. They would not have done that if they feared that the U.S. might end its military support and its diplomatic protection in the United States, in the United Nations. What we're looking at is the results of this impunity, the results of the disdain that the Israeli government has shown for the concerns of the United States around its own security, its own relationships with other countries in the region, the security of its own base. I think the question of who knew what when, we have a lot more information to learn. I don't accept at face value the notion that from the United States that we knew nothing about it. They control a base very close to where this attack happened. And the notion that they could not have done anything ahead of time to prevent it, to stop it, to order the Israelis not to, on pain of losing all access to military equipment and weapons if they did not stop it, I think that's probably a more likely possibility than the notion that they didn't know until it was too late.
OK, Phyllis, really good to get your perspective. Stay with us because I will come back to you at some point. We are waiting.